Welcome on into the show, everybody. It is episode 35, season 8 here on the Hooper's Log for May 17th, Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. That is right. We are here talking about the conference finals as we're here. We've made it. We've made it to the penultimate series of the 2021-2022 season, and the Final Four is set, and we are now in the run down end of the year bonanza that is basketball every day, one game a day, and really every single team that's made it to this point is outstanding. Every single team that is here has history, has incredible intestinal fortitude, has talent, has defensive prowess. There's a lot of really, really good basketball that we're about to witness here in the next couple weeks. And I think a lot of these series could be boom or bust regarding how they finish. I think a lot of these matchups are going to be outstanding. I think the way all the teams are playing right now, is going to make for a hell of a conference finals for both teams. And the interesting thing from a narrative perspective, as we're going to break down today, it is lottery day in the NBA, by the way. I'm not going to talk about the lottery, but I'm sure you can catch free basketball from Monday and obviously tomorrow in regards to the recap of where we are and where we are moving forward with the lottery. They will break it down for you. They will give you all the ins and outs. But today is lottery day. It is exciting. As somebody who's on in the Twitter sphere regarding, Spurs lead, it is an exciting day today. I think this is the first time, honestly, in about 25 years where I've sat back and said, you know what? I'm pretty all in on getting a decent draft pick this year. And I don't think anybody who isn't a Spurs fan would sit there and tell you otherwise. I think for the first time, we're all like, yeah, we do need a good draft pick. We need a solid guy to add to our team to make us successful. And I think that's a lot of teams. Honestly, about 10 to 12 of these teams that are in this lottery need a solid player. They don't need a generational guy. They just need someone solid to jump in and to impact the team immediately. Whether that's off the bench, whether that's a starting position, whether that's, being the guy. There's a lot. And I think it's going to be an interesting draft, obviously, in a month from now, but the lottery is today. So, obviously, even if your team isn't to this point in the season regarding getting to the conference finals and getting to really where you want to be as a franchise, I think it's a good time for those bottom 14 teams to sit back and say, you know what? We could make it here one day. I mean, just look at these teams. Look at the last couple of years with the Phoenix Suns and a couple other teams. They're finding ways. The Atlanta Hawks last year. There's teams who can get to these points and get to where we are right now, and it's a fun time. And I mean, look at the Dallas Mavericks. They're a team. When you're looking at where they are, nobody. I certainly did not think they would get to this point, and there's a lot to break down with them, which I will here shortly. But the teams that come into these situations and come into these scenarios for opportunities to be as successful as they can be to get to an NBA Finals, which we're now on the doorstep of for both of these, or all four of these teams, is really intensity, chemistry, defensive communication. There's so many different angles in which you can get to these points. Look at the Golden State Warriors. They are the representative class of the Western Conference for the last decade. It's 2022. Over the last decade, they have made the playoffs consistently, almost every single year, outside of the past 2 years. And we know the last 2 years they were what they were, but there's a lot of injuries. There was a lot of chemistry changes. There was a lot of team overhaul. There was a lot of changes going on for that team and a lot of stuff that really was out of their control. The injuries, the roster turnover, the free agency situation. There's a little bit of drama in the locker room with older guys and just going through a lot. The COVID stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on for Golden State, but outside of these last 2 years, this last decade, they've been the class of the Western Conference. So nobody could sit back and be shocked if they won the championship again, right? I mean, nobody would be shocked. The other fun thing about them playing the Dallas Mavericks is this. The last time these two teams met in the playoffs, you want to take a guess? The first round of the 2007, first round of the 2007 Western Conference playoffs. 1 versus 8, the We Believe Warriors as the 8th seed playing the number one seed Dallas Mavericks with the MVP in Dirk Nowitzki of the NBA, and frankly, the clear-cut, almost no debate championship favorite for the 2006-2007 season, because the year before they played the Miami Heat in the NBA championship, lost to D. Wade and Shaq, and frankly, they could have won that series. They went up 2-0, lost the final four of that series, and coming into that next season, especially after the way they played in the regular season, they looked like a gauntlet. They looked like the clear-cut, bona fide, dominant team to beat, and nobody was going to stop them. Well, then this little itty-bitty team out of San Francisco, or should I say the Bay Area, came out and absolutely laid the wood to them. And I think they beat them in 5, if not 6. 15 years ago, this playoffs, 15 years and a month ago, is when they played. Think about that. How many months is that when you really break that down? So 5 times 12, 60, what's, 120, 180, 181 months ago is when these teams played. Nobody on these rosters is even relevant to what those rosters were. Nobody's even comparable. But the interesting narrative and storyline coming in that is comparable is that since that series in 2007, when both of these teams played, they were in completely different roles than they are now. The Dallas Mavericks just came off of an NBA Finals appearance where they were hungry. They were ready to go. They were ready to really shine in the playoffs and go up against some opponents, which they would have played the Utah Jazz in the next round. And then they would have played the winner of San Antonio Phoenix, which we all knew as the 2-3 series was more than likely going to have to face Dallas, and that was really the conversation in the West that year, was Phoenix, San Antonio, and Dallas. Those were the 3 teams. Can Phoenix finally get over the hump? Can San Antonio, come back after the devastating 2006 series when they lost to Dallas in 7 in the semifinals? Can Dallas finally overcome what they couldn't do in the 07 finals, the 06 finals when they lost to D. Wade, the young D. Wade, baby D. Wade, like 3-year-old, 3 years in the league D. Wade, and veteran Shaq. When they were up 2-0, you thought, wow, how did they choke that away, right? So they came into that league hungry, and they just got, just curb stomped in the first round by the We Believe Warriors, and it was an unbelievable series. I mean, there were a lot of blowouts in that series, but the emotion, the culture, the energy was, bar none, some of the greatest theater you'll ever see in sports. And that's why a lot of people talk about it to this day, not just because of the upset, but because of the way it was done. The way the Warriors played in that series, from a defensive, from an energy, from a attention to detail, from a in-depth, from a chemistry. Every single angle that the Warriors brought in that series in 2007 is very, very, very eerily similar on a reverse role perspective of this year in the Western Conference Finals. People think I'm crazy in saying this, but we call ourselves the Lead SM for a reason. People think I am bonkers when I bring this up. This Mavericks team, who just beat the best team in basketball from the last 2 years from a consistency perspective. Yes, they did not beat the Milwaukee Bucks in the finals. In fact, they went up 2-0 and lost the last 4 in a row. Very, very, very similarly to the Milwaukee Bucks, just like very similarly to what the Dallas Mavericks did in 2006 in the NBA Finals. You could make the case that Phoenix was probably the better overall team against Milwaukee, but Milwaukee had the better player. Milwaukee had the better chemistry. Milwaukee had the better moments. Milwaukee stepped up at the right times. It was Milwaukee's time. And no one's going to debate that, and no one should sit back and fault Phoenix for falling flat on their face against Dallas in the Game 7, which was a joke, by the way, the other night. Nobody should blame Phoenix for that. That's not fair. That's inaccurate, and no one should step back and, say Milwaukee's trash because Kevin Durant stepped on the line and, all these things back in the semifinals a year ago. That's a joke. That's a joke. If you believe that the Milwaukee Bucks weren't good enough to win the finals, you're an absolute joke. If you think Phoenix is a joke because they got, an easier year the year before because of the 72 game season and the no fans and the weirdness and all that, and they made it to the finals because of all those circumstances, you're a joke. Like, those were the two best teams in basketball last year. The way they both played in the playoffs, with really, at all intents and purposes, normal circumstances, they played phenomenal. And they did what you're supposed to do to win a championship. So to think that because they couldn't do it this year, it doesn't make it real. It's the same kind of people who said that the Lakers and the Heat, when they went to the finals, it wasn't real because they played in completely irregular circumstances. No, everybody who was in the playoffs that year had the same exact circumstances. They're weird. They were weird and different and odd. But they all had to play through it. In the Western Conference Finals, I think it's fair to say that with what the Mavs just did in Game 7 of the Western Conference semifinals against the best team in basketball consistently over the last, you could make the case, 18 months, has put forth an ideology in my brain that you could make the case and call them the We Believe Mavericks. But Chris, that's not right to what Golden State did in 07 and that they were complete underdogs. And, well, let me explain something to you. The Mavericks beat the Utah Jazz in the first round, right? And I'll be honest with you. Over the last however many years with Quinn Snyder, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, their entire squad, they have had a very, very good team the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years. Honestly, since Donovan Mitchell got into the league, the Utah Jazz have been one of the most consistent, well-run organizations in all of basketball. They just cannot get it done in the playoffs. But is that the Mavericks' fault? I don't think so. They beat the tar out of Utah in a couple of games, and they made it look easy. And for them to do that, I thought was a little bit of an anomaly. Ultimately, when they played most of the games, there were some games that were close, but you get that in the playoffs. That's how the playoffs work. But then they went into Phoenix and played Phoenix. And obviously, Phoenix played well. I mean, it's a 7-game series. It was what it was. And I honestly thought Phoenix would still pull it out in 7. I thought they would go 7. And then especially when I heard that Luka wasn't healthy walking into the series, I thought, well, maybe I should have changed my pick to Phoenix in like 5 or 6. Instead, when Luka was out, I think it was the first game, if not both games, the first portion of the series, Dallas looked like a team that had just started gelling at the exact right time. From a defensive prowess perspective, from guys stepping up off the bench, and Kleber and you got Brunson. These guys coming in and playing their brand of basketball, doing what they want to do with completely cool-headedness mentalities coming in, like almost as if they've been here before. No, over-the-top nonsense, just getting it done when it matters. They looked like the more prepared team than Phoenix. Now, Phoenix was clearly prepared. 7-game series, you knew that it was going to be a dogfight one way or the other. But when you look at the way Phoenix showed up in Game 7, it was 67-27 at halftime of Game 7. It was a 40-point shell-shocked, dominant performance by the Dallas Mavericks in Game 7. I turned it off when it was 70-31. There was no point in watching the rest of that game. There was no point with about 18, 20 minutes left in the ballgame. There was no point. Dallas had proven and put in their brand of basketball and decided to tell the Phoenix Suns, get bent and figure it out. You're not beating us. When you do that to the best team in basketball the last 2 years, and now you're about to go play a championship pedigree squad in the Golden State Warriors, who they themselves are looking like a very gauntlet-looking like team, this is where you start to say, obviously over the last 5 to 7 years with what the Golden State Warriors have done, from a historical context, from a consistent, from a what they've done for years and years and years now perspective, they're not an underdog. by any means. Golden State's kind of in the similar situation as to what Milwaukee was in last year, after Milwaukee got past Brooklyn in the second round. Once they beat Brooklyn, I'll be 100% honest with you. It was almost smooth sailing. They played Atlanta, who, if I'm not mistaken, was like, what, fifth or fourth seed in the East last year? I know they played New York in the first round last year. They beat them pretty handily for the most part. There was a couple games Giannis didn't show up, but for the most part, they played phenomenal. And then they played Phoenix, who, I mean, for all intents and purposes at the time, Phoenix seemed to be kind of a pretender because of what they had done the previous decade. And obviously, Phoenix came out barnstorming and playing great in the first couple games of that finals, but then Milwaukee cemented themselves and won the chip. But Golden State's in a very similar circumstance here. They're playing a team that has no expectations in the Dallas Mavericks. They're, for all intents and purposes, they are beaten up. They have played a great Phoenix team, because they are. Phoenix proved that this year they are a great team. They are easily championship capable. And they got beat by a team that just flat out started clicking and gelling at the right time. When you don't even need to have your superstar going off and playing phenomenal basketball, when normally the way your team runs is 70% effectiveness through one man, and you don't even need him to put up more than 25 points and even have an efficient night and just kind of have a casual day. It's very, very, very similar when you play that brand of basketball and you play relatively slow pace. I'm not saying completely, but relatively slow pace to not just Luka's standards, but the whole team standards. It's very similar to 90s basketball. It's very Michael Jordan. If you combined what Michael Jordan and James Harden did, what James Harden did with the Houston Rockets back in 2017, 2018, around that time, when they got to the Western Conference Finals and they lost to Golden State, it's very comparable to that, along with what the 90s Bulls did. If you combined those late 2010s Rockets teams with the mid-90s Bulls team, from a usage perspective and an overall chemistry and grappling the way they play perspective, with Luka really playing the MJ role and obviously playing the James Harden role, you kind of get a feeling that this team has a lot more of a ceiling now than they ever did when all they did was say, Luka, here's the ball, figure it out. That's not the case anymore. And I think what a lot of people forgot, and I'm going to tie this back in because I know a lot of the Milwaukee Bucks fans know exactly what I'm talking about. The Milwaukee Bucks, for about really the entire time they had Jason Kidd, the entire era of Jason Kidd being there, they improved every single year. And I know Mike Budenholzer has been really the staple of what they've done the last 4 years, right, if I'm not mistaken. But those 3 to 4 years that Jason Kidd was there, I think he was trying to figure it out as a head coach. I think he was trying to get his bearings underneath him. I think he was trying to get things figured out. I think he's finally figured it out. I think he has a squad in Dallas where he knows exactly what he needs to do, push the exact buttons he needs to push, put in guys at the right time. And I think now it's all about the players performing, and they're doing exactly what they need to do. And they don't even need their star to be the guy. He just needs to go out there, be effective, with or without the basketball. He needs to set up the offense, start the flow, get his when he can. It's a lot like baseball. I hate the cross-reference, but it's a lot like baseball. When you step up to the plate, you're not trying to do too much with the baseball. Yeah, I know guys hit home runs, but to be 100% honest with you, about 90% of the guys who, when they hit home runs, they're not trying to do too much with the baseball. They're just trying to get good contact. They're just trying to get what they're given. They're trying to take what they are given. Luka, all he does right now is take what he is given. He doesn't force anything. He doesn't over the top do anything. From an efficiency perspective, he is almost perfect to what he needs to do to be impactful for his team offensively and, frankly, defensively. He is taming out and mellowing out to what we all finally want Luka to be. And he doesn't even need to be the stat monster, the stat stuffer machine monster that he is, he doesn't even need to do that to be successful. And when that's the case for this team, that's when you look at the ceiling, and if it's dark, you can't see it. You can't see it. That was really stupid. When there's a candle lit, you can tell where the ceiling is, right? It shines off the ceiling. You see where it is. This is what I meant to say. When the Mavericks candle is lit with the way they're playing, you don't know where the light's finishing. You can't see it. They have no ceiling. And when all you got is a candle and no ceiling, are you even inside? You might be outside. Who knows where you are at that point? The Mavericks, from a scheme, from a philosophy, from a ingenuity, from a in-depth, it might be really hard to gauge on how to play them right now. They have never played this way. The way they've played, honestly, since maybe about midway through the Utah series, they have looked like a completely different team. I thought they would lose to Utah because Utah plays a complete brand of basketball that Quinn Snyder has put together for that program, and they have been outstanding doing it. Now, they may have had a little bit of a down year this year, but they're usually very consistent. Dallas completely stifled them. Dallas just stifled the best team in basketball as well. What makes you think that with no pressure and no expectation for them to do anything in this next series, that they're not going to completely stifle Golden State in a couple of games? Golden State is not the Golden State from 2015 through 2019. They are not the same team. I'm not sitting here and telling you they're trash. I think they're in the driver's seat. I think they should be the favorites right now, as we currently sit, to be the NBA champions. But I think with where they are in their small, minute rebuild of what they're doing, I don't know if they're really fully ready for what Dallas is about to show them. And I mean that in all sincerity. I'm not sitting here and saying Dallas is the favorite, because they are not. But when you have a team that has done it against a team like Phoenix and a good, solid organization like the Utah Jazz, and they frankly make both of those organizations at times look like straight garbage when those two teams are fantastic and have been for X amount of years. Phoenix more recently, but Utah for the long term. Now you're going to play a team that's got championship poise with no expectations and no experience. That's a terrible, scary recipe for a Golden State team that is phenomenal, but frankly, in kind of a new spot. Again, I think Golden State's the favorites. But if you don't think the Mavericks aren't coming into this series looking at the overall narrative of, we got nothing to lose. What's the big deal here? If we lose a couple games, who cares? We can always bounce back and do it again. We're in the driver's we are in the money right now. Whatever we do from here on out, we are in the money. Even if we lose the series, even if we get swept, we have done what nobody thought we would do and be great at what we're doing. I think the Dallas Mavericks are going to come into this series and they are going to shock some people. I think Golden State is going to win the first couple of games in this series. And I think they're going to be relatively close. I think the first game might be a little bit of a blowout. But I think the next game, Dallas is going to implement some things and make adjustments, like I've said in the past. In May, you make adjustments. That's what happens. And I think if Dallas makes the right adjustments in Game 2, and it's a close game, a lot like the Memphis and Golden State series, which, by the way, unbelievable series. Even though the series went 6, that was an unbelievable, emotional roller coaster ride and phenomenal basketball. Hats off to the Memphis Grizzlies. Dylan Brooks said it. They're coming for him. You ain't wrong. Memphis might be on the doorstep of a championship conversation. They are that good. They are that good of an organization. And obviously, talking about Phoenix, they're right there. I mean, there's no debate. Phoenix could do exactly what they did this past year with the same unit if everybody comes back. and they could easily contend for a title. They're that good. I thought they were title worthy this year. Apparently not. That's my thought process with Dallas. I think they're going to make adjustments. I think they're going to go home and they're going to win their games. And then we're going to be sitting and looking at a game 5 and thinking, this is the same exact conversation we had about Phoenix. Even though they went up 3-2, Dallas still did not die. That's the craziest part about this. Phoenix came out, and if I'm not mistaken, throttled Dallas in Game 5. And then they died in Game 6 and Game 7, if I'm not mistaken. That is incredibly powerful for where these series go. And if you can do that against the best team in basketball the last 2 years, coming back and beating them back-to-back games when you know you have to go into a Game 7 and beat them, that is incredibly confident boosting to play a team like Golden State. Okay, we'll lose our first 2 games on the road. Let's go home and see what they want to do. Then we'll take it back to their place, put the pressure on them. And even if they win, guess what? You know what we did in the last series? We won the last 2. And we knew going into a Game 7 we had no advantage. And we still shut the building down. I think the Mavericks are going to win the series in 6. I think they're going to shock the world. I don't think anybody's going to be understanding why Dallas has all of a sudden found this magical potion to become this team that is frankly terrifying. They are a team right now where if they keep playing this brand of basketball, playing at the Luka pace, playing at an overall team level where there's a bunch of no-names coming out and playing absolutely balls-to-the-wall basketball, they might win the chip. And when you got nothing to lose and you figured it out as a team and you're playing loose, and it's really, really, really hard to beat that kind of team. And I think Dallas, after beating Phoenix, really, honestly, just blowing them out of the water, I think Dallas has found something, and I don't know if any team right now can replicate it. And when you've got a guy for when you're down a couple baskets with 5 minutes to go, who can do whatever he wants late in the game to whomever he wants from wherever he wants on the floor, that becomes a very scary proposition when the rest of the team has confidence and can shoot it and play from anywhere. This is no knock on Steph Curry or Klay Thompson or Draymond Green. But neither of those guys, and again, Steph Curry is a phenomenal, generational player. He is no Luka Doncic. I am so sorry. Stephen Curry cannot do what Luka can do. He has never been able to do what Luka can do. It's just like saying Steph Curry could never be LeBron James. It's obvious. No, Steph could never be LeBron. Steph could never be Giannis. We're just stating facts here. Luka Doncic, when he needs the ball late in a ball game, can absolutely torch you. And if the rest of the team has confidence, and all he's got to do is drive the lane and kick and dish, and then they dish it back and make a couple of extra passes here and there and get an open shot, good night. Good night. I got the Mavericks in 6, and I think they're going to absolutely shock the entire NBA landscape. Frankly, they already did it to me with beating Phoenix the way they beat them, but I think that will be the extra confidence that they need to play anybody. It's a lot like the We Believe Warriors. When they beat the Mavericks in 2007, they had all the confidence in the world playing Utah. I know, Utah beat them. Utah played my Spurs. My Spurs kicked their butt, and then my Spurs kicked the Cleveland Cavaliers' butt. But when you beat the best team in basketball the way they just beat them, how do you not have confidence moving forward? And especially knowing that you're playing a team who, frankly, is in a little bit of a interesting rebuild / Golden State's in an interesting place. It's a great place. They're in the driver's seat. I think they're favorites to win the title. But I don't think they're ready for Dallas. I really don't. I don't think they're ready for this Dallas. And that's where it's going to be interesting. I think it's the We Believe Mavs. I really do. This is the We Believe Mavs. You know what they say about karma, right? What goes around comes around. And I think the Dallas Mavericks are going to give the Warriors really a 15, or should I say 15 years slash 181 months of rent that is due for an NBA Finals appearance for their first one in 11 years. Okay, Eastern Conference Finals. We just talked about the bubble and how everybody gave excuses for last year and the Mavericks. Last year and the Suns and the Bucks because they had a weird year, and then obviously the year before that with the season going all the way into October because of the fact that they had to play in the bubble for 2.5 months and all that, and how people didn't claim it as legitimate and all that stuff. Well, this Eastern Conference Finals is a rematch of reality, right? So back in, for those that have very small attention spans, which is not shocking in today's era, when the Heat and Celtics played in the NBA West Eastern Conference Finals in 2020, which was, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, September, if not early October. A very, very weird situation. Bubble, no fans, completely odd, off kilter, all the adjectives. We all didn't get a sense of how the series obviously could play itself out. And I think in all reality, from an X's and O's perspective, it was very, very, very hard to watch that series and think, man, I wish they would have had reality. I wish they would have had fans. I wish they would have had noise. I wish they would have had to deal with all of these things. I wish they would have had to deal with adjustments in game and timeouts, all the crazy things with refs, traveling. They didn't get any of that. This was basically just basketball in a hardwood gym with nothing. And I know Brad Stevens isn't there anymore, and I know Kemba Walker's not there anymore, and I know these rosters are actually pretty different comparably. I know the Heat are very similar, but the Celtics are much different, and the Celtics are much more primed for this scenario. Way more primed. They were not ready for all that weird funkiness on top of their guys being super young and not prepared. And I honestly don't think Brad Stevens, he was frankly ready to coach against Eric Spoelstra. I think he frankly got absolutely dominated. He didn't make in-game adjustments on constant, multiple occasions, and Eric Spoelstra just said, "You're going to keep giving me this. You're going to keep giving me this look. I'm going to keep taking it." And he would do the same thing like 3 or 4 times in a row. And then Brad Stevens was like, "Okay, I'm clearly not smart enough. This is why I need to go work in the front office." And he figured it out after last year and was like, "Yeah, I got to go." And clearly he wasn't the answer because Ime Udoka, who's been there for the whole year now, has figured it out faster than Brad Stevens ever figured it out. And I think we've now seen why maybe Brad Stevens wasn't the guy. Because the Celtics look absolutely amazing. I mean, they look like a complete unit. And to be honest with you, I think from a rematch perspective from a personnel perspective on both of these teams, this is going to be really going to come down to the adjustments and the changes. And when I give my prediction, I don't want people to think that I don't think this series is going to be great. I think this series is going to have 3 or 4 really, really, really good games. I think there's going to be one massive blowout, but I think for the most part, it's going to have a really, really, really good, pure basketball feel to it. From the standpoint of, I think the X's and O's and the changes and the chemistry and all of those things are going to kick into place. Both teams have the chemistry. Both teams have the talent. Both teams have the capability. And both teams could frankly win an NBA championship, honestly. And it doesn't matter who all 4 of these teams can win the championship. But I think with what Miami has from a personnel perspective and knowing that they've been here before. I mean, I know Boston has too, but from the standpoint of Miami's been to a finals before. Eric Spoelstra's been to 5 finals in his career, with or without LeBron James. That's phenomenal. He knows exactly what he needs to do with his team to get where they need to go. They're the 1 seed in the East. They've got the home court. And it's not just because of that. It's because they have the better coaching staff. I think this series will be a big testament and a big knowledge gap for Ime Udoka. It's going to be a big one. I don't think he's a bad coach. I just don't think he can compare to Eric Spoelstra, who's been doing this for, 14, 15 years now at the NBA level, and he's deserved one of the top 15 coaches of all time. He's amazing. And his ability to adapt and change his roster and figure out where guys need to be and change the different looks and make certain guys important on certain nights for certain situations is incredibly valuable and understandable for why you would think the Boston Celtics don't even stand a chance in this series from that perspective alone. From a talent perspective, my God, Jason Tatum looks like one of the next great players in this game. Game 7, he was phenomenal. Game 6, he was phenomenal. When they came back and won that series against Milwaukee, I was blown away at the poise in which Jason Tatum played his game to the level in which he wanted to play it. And it was very, I know a lot of young kids never saw Kobe. I'm talking kids under the age of 10, never saw Kobe play. But the mentality in which, and I know this is a big compliment to Jason Tatum because Jason Tatum idolizes Kobe. In fact, when Kobe had his, when they did the whole detail series back 2015, when Kobe Bryant did one of those, Jason Tatum said he watched it like 70 times. Jason Tatum loves Kobe Bryant because I think he was watching one that was done on him that Kobe Bryant narrated, or vice versa. It was like they did one on Kobe Bryant and his moves and whatever. Doesn't matter. Jason Tatum watched it forever. Jason Tatum loves Kobe Bryant. That's his guy. He looked like Kobe Bryant in Game 6. And when we talk about performances and moments and situations and, highlight moments of your career, people talk about LeBron and his Game 6 against the Celtics back in 2012, 10 years ago. People talk about, the Klay Thompson Game 6, 2016 in the Western Conference Finals. This Game 6 for Jason Tatum isn't on that level from an overall performance perspective, like a important level, because the Celtics had that game pretty much in hand. But from a team building narrative of what Jason Tatum is moving forward, if you don't put Jason Tatum in the superstar category relatively soon, or at least have him sniffing that conversation, I don't know what you're doing. Because he was unbelievable in Game 6. He shut the building down. I mean, he did exactly what you want your superstar to do in critical situations on multiple occasions. And he was the guy. And there's nothing more you could ask for him. What was it, 46 points? God, he was incredible. All the shots he was hitting, his mid-range, his step backs, everything he needed to go in when it needed to go in, went in. Huge game. And then Game 7, God, they came out and blew the doors off Milwaukee as a unit. And so I think this series has the potential to go so many different ways. I really could see Boston winning it. I could see Miami winning it in 7. I could see Boston winning it in 5. I could see Miami winning it in 6. Boston 7. Like, I could see this going so many different ways. I just think the biggest difference is what's up top in regards to organizational structure. That's not to say Boston has trash structure up top. I don't think that's the case. I just think that Miami has just been here, done that. They're very, very, very detail oriented. They're very in their way. They're very with what they do, casual, go about their business, do it the same, and no one's going to take that from them mentality. And they're just such a consistent organization right now. I think it's tough to go against them. Again, that is not to say that Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, any of these guys could come out and go off on certain nights and destroy Miami, because it could happen. I just think that Miami is on a mission. They're going to prove why they're a bigger deal, why they're the 1 seed. And I think this is their time. And honestly, Eric Spoelstra's time to show the world, listen, I didn't just get to the finals because of LeBron James. I'm a bad man. And I think he's going to prove to the world he can shut down anybody. I think the Miami Heat are going to win their series in 5. I think when you look at how it could all play out, Boston is going to play so well against Miami. These games are going to be great. But I think Miami is going to have it in the bag from a coaching perspective. And that is going to be the big eye opener later in this series. I think the first couple games we're going to get some close games just because teams are feeling each other out and the talent in Boston is just so good that it's going to be tough for Miami to really catch on to that ultimately. And I think Boston will take a game at home. But I think by like game 4, the coaching adjustment ability is going to just stretch it out. In regards to stretch it out as in, oh, this is why Boston can't win the title yet, right? It doesn't mean Ime Udoka can't win the title. I just don't think it's yet. Yet. And it's only because he's not Eric Spoelstra right now. I think this is Miami's time. I think game 4, if they get to that point, we're going to look at it and say, oh, this is why Boston's not ready yet. Not because they're not good enough, because they are, but just because they don't have that yet. They don't have that coach. They don't have that adjustment ability. They don't have that recognition. This series will teach them that. And I think going into next year, you're looking at a potential Eastern Conference favorite. We can talk about Brooklyn, and I think Brooklyn's in the conversation, but they're their own mess. Boston can beat Brooklyn like they did this year. And honestly, I don't think people would be shocked just because they're a phenomenal team. So overall, I've got the Heat in 5. I've got the Mavericks in 6. Guess what? You know what that means? We're getting our decade quota for getting Mavs and Heat. They played in 2006. They played in 2011. It's 2022. We'll get that series out of the way. We can meet our quota. And I got no idea who's going to win the title. I'm not here to predict that yet. But my series went up in smoke. I had the Phoenix Suns winning the title before the playoffs. I'm clearly wrong. And I'm excited about that because that makes these conference finals that much more exciting and that much more appealing overall. So I want you to go into these series looking at it from the narrative perspective and seeing how different, how interesting things will play themselves out to be. Because with the things I just broke down and talked to you about, you have to recognize that the narratives is what's going to make these series what they are. Mavericks underdogs. Golden State, for the last 7 years, frankly, has been deservedly viewed as the best model organization in the sport. And that's not a debate. They have. They've got championship pedigree. They're the only team left with championship pedigree. Yes, Miami made it to the finals a couple years ago, a year and a half ago. But they didn't win the title. And they're not the same team. And nobody is. But it's a different time. Boston is very young still. That's not to say Boston can't go to the finals, because they definitely could. And obviously Dallas is the dark horse. Dallas became the dark horse. They are the team with nothing to lose. This is the first time since the mid-70s that we have seen, that we will have a non-back-to-back champion for 5 straight years, with the Warriors in 18, Raptors in 19, Lakers in 20, Bucks in 21, and whomever comes out in 2022. And if it's not the Warriors, that's 5 straight teams with different championships. We are in the parity era of the NBA. This is what the NBA has always wanted. And we're going to see it starting tonight. I believe it's the Eastern Conference Finals that tips off tonight, if I am not mistaken. So, get your favorite beverage, watch the lottery pregame, beforehand, see how the future of the league is going to play itself out, and then just sit back for every day at 5:30 p.m. Pacific or 8:30 p.m. Eastern and just get ready for some great hoop. It's going to be great. Our next episode is episode 36. We're going to talk about the first couple games of these conference finals and how they've played out. I don't anticipate a lot of big time changes, etc. But the first 2 to 3 games we're going to talk about in these conference finals and give you an idea as to what to see for the rest of the series, because we'll be halfway through by the time we get there. And then honestly, the NBA finals will be pretty much ready to go on our next show after that. So episode 35 is in the books. Episode 36 will be on the 24th of May. Thank you again for listening. I'll see you next week.